Alright, let's start by looking at the review. We have x plus 3 squared, which is just x plus 3 times x plus 3, which gives us x squared plus 6x plus 9. The second one is x minus 5 squared, which again is just x minus 5 times x minus 5, which gives us x squared minus 10x plus 25. And the third one, a plus b squared, again a plus b times a plus b, which gives us a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. So you can see the pattern in all three of those is square the first term, square the second term, multiply them together, and then multiply by 2 to get the middle term, and complete multiplying the squares. Okay, so now let's think about completing the square. That's, like I said earlier, that's a new type of solving a quadratic equation. We already know how to graph it. We know how to solve it by factoring. We know how to solve it with the quadratic formula, but all those can be tedious, or at least the quadratic formula can be tedious. The others, you have to be able to factor it. Completing the square is a way to get around not having to use the quadratic formula and still get those odd decimal answers. We'll start by looking at the notes and filling in the blank. Starting with the first thing you want to have is your equation not in the normal standard form, but in ax squared plus bx equals c form. So basically we're solving for c. We want to get c on the right side. We want the variables on the left side. Our next step is divide everything by the a value so that the coefficient of x squared is 1. Now we're not going to have to do that much today, but that's one of the steps, so you need to know it, and leads us to what we're going to be doing today, which is everything should have a coefficient of 1 already. Our third step is to take b and divide it by 2. Then we're going to square it, and then add it back to both sides. Now we should have a trinomial on the left and 1 or 2 numbers on the right. So our next step is to factor what should be a trinomial square. So let's just put perfect square trinomial on the left side of the equation, and then to simplify the right side so that we end up with a nice trinomial equals a single number. Now, when you factor the left side, something to remember is that it always factors into this form. X plus b divided by 2. So whatever that b over 2 is, when you're up there at this third step divided by 2, that number is going to be your part of your perfect square. For your next step, you're going to take the square root of both sides. Don't forget that it is a plus minus. That means you're going to have 2 different answers. You're going to have a positive square root, and you're going to have a negative square root. Okay? So then you're going to have to solve it twice. All right, so let's try an example. We have x squared plus 8x plus 9 equals 0. We need to start off by putting it into the right form, and the right form would be x squared plus 8x equals negative 9. We've now got ax squared plus bx equals c. Now it's going to give us a chance to complete this square. Our next step is to divide everything by a. Well, a in this case is 1, so if we divide everything by 1, that really doesn't change anything. So we still have x squared plus 8x equals negative 9. Where that really helps is when you have something like 4x squared plus 8x or something like that, where you have a lead coefficient of something other than 1. For our next step, we're going to take b, we're going to divide it by 2. So I'm going to go over here. 8 divided by 2 equals 4. And then we're going to square this number. 4 squared is 16. And that's what gets added back to both of these. So now we have x squared plus 8x plus 16 equals 7. So we have our steps here. Now you can see I've already simplified the right side, but now we're going to factor this left side. Now it should be a perfect square, and like I said earlier, when we factor it, it's going to be in that form x plus b over 2. And b over 2 was this number here. So it's going to be x plus 4 squared equals 7. Our next step is to take the square root of both sides. Well, in other words, that means factor the x plus 4 squared, so it becomes x plus 4. But this next step is what I was talking about with the 7. If you take the square root of 7, remember, you technically, when you take the square root of 7, get a positive and a negative number. So when we solve it on the next screen, we're going to actually have to solve it twice. We're going to have to solve it as x plus 4 equals square root of 7, and x plus 4 equals negative square root of 7. Okay, so here we see how I've gone ahead and split it up. X plus 4 equals the square root of 7, and x plus 4 equals the negative square root of 7. And now it's simply solving. Subtract 4, and you have x equals the square root of 7 minus 4. And over here, do the same thing, and you have x equals negative square root of 7 minus 4. And then we can use our calculator. And by doing that, we will get x equals negative 1.354, rounded to the thousands place. And over here, we're going to get x equals negative 6.646, also rounded to the thousands place. Now we can check that by graphing this equation on the calculator, and then just looking. We should see a graph that looks something like, well, that's negative 1, negative 2. We know that one of the, it's going to look like this and come back up here, and this is going to be about negative 6.6, or between negative 6 and 7.